about the US military using AI. So AI has just flown a F-16 fighter jet for 17 hours straight. Artificial intelligence is starting to replace military pilots. Some people are concerned that giving AI control of weapon-based systems could possibly backfire. I wonder why you'd think that. That's an interesting observation, probably an accurate one. But AI replacing pilots, replacing members of the US military. What are your thoughts on that, Yarrow?
Yeah, so basically it reminds me about the news that they were running some simulation with AI with the fighter jet, and in the end the fighter jet actually killed the operator because the operator was trying to give them the false commands. So
Okay.
I wouldn't empower the AI with that sort of tools to actually to destroy anyone. At the same time, I kind of see a good future for this project, probably not in aerospace as fighter jets, but probably for the space itself.
Okay.
Because technically you don't need humans to put the ship somewhere in the universe, and it can control, it can take, well, you see some asteroids on the way, you just simply dodge it, and
Yeah.
So I think that's probably where it should be, but at the same time, it's really nice. And I mean, I think it's 17 hours, right? So it's quite a long trip. So.
I mean, I completely agree with you. The AI application for the navigation, for space exploration, space tourism, or even just like normal planes, I mean, helicopters, whatever, cars. I mean, yeah, like self-drive it, make it automated, amazing. When we start going to like weapons of war and like giving like smart systems, which who knows if they'll be sentient one day, when we start giving them that control and power, I'm like, yeah, that's a little bit, perhaps a little bit too far. The problem is, if the US doesn't do this, China are going to do it, Russia are going to do it, so they kind of have to do it by the competitive landscape of warfare. What's your take, Jason, on the US military replacing pilots with AI systems?
Yeah, I guess we've talked about it a lot. We did it at the top of the chat about the flamethrower dog and things like that.
Same
similar sort
topic.
of world, and I feel like again, autopilot on planes, maybe that's guided. It's like the difference between AGI, ASI, our kind of sense of how much free will does this thing really have. And we give 21-year-olds, you need to have gone to uni to be a pilot or whatever, at least in the RAF, I think.
Okay.
And so we're training like people in their early 20s who have just got out of uni. Maybe they haven't been as wayward as others because they're going to be a pilot in the RAF. One would assume that they've lived a certain kind of life and studied in a certain kind of way. But I mean, like, what's the moral ability and compass in terms of this sum of experience in a 21-year-old, and where are we with where this AI's ability, like maybe that's like 2-year-old or 3-year-old. And no, I wouldn't give a missile to my
soon it will be smarter,
4-year-old,
right? Like soon we'll have a situation where these AI systems are better pilots than the 21-year-olds. So at that point, should we let them have the control?
And yeah, I think about the number of mistakes. People are talking about self-driving cars.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, this could be total fake news, and I apologize, but I imagine that there are more deaths to car accidents than there are to missiles being fired by, I mean, that's a big claim.
I have no idea, but my gut would say probably.
My gut would say probably.
Yeah,
too.
car accidents seem to be like a huge cause of death for average people, whereas war is obviously a lot different type of.
And everyone's desperate to put self-driving cars, and I tell you what, a car on a busy high street is a much more dangerous weapon than some air-to-ground missile.
In terms of the numbers, yeah, probably, yeah. Yeah.
And all of those other safety nets involved in getting that weapon onto the delivery platform, getting that delivery platform in the air, giving it the scope to do whatever work it needs to do. If this AI is being like, I fancy going for a joyride and I'm going to load up with a bunch of ammo, that's probably a line we wouldn't want to let the robot cross. But we currently let people be like, I'm going to come out of a bar at 2 a.m. Smashed and think that I can drive myself home. So that to me seems far more dangerous. So I think in terms of absolute risk, it feels again uneasy. But a lot of this, the ship has sailed. The cruise missiles and things like that again that do like target detection, and a lot of what's happening with we talked about drone operator, some guy in Iowa, right, in some base flying a drone. He's got a targeting computer telling him what he should be maybe looking at or should be assessing, right? And then he's going, yeah, probably right. Click a button.
It's already happening to a degree, but the human's just there to, confirm the AI's decision. Whereas this is kind of just replacing that human checkpoint from the end point. What's your view, Yarrow, on like, should we trust AI with weapons? Like, it's like such a big topic, isn't it?
Yeah,
great one for a morning as well.
Yeah. So that's a hard question for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see one of the problems that it may bring is the fact that the human is pulling the trigger, but the killing is actually happening by AI. So this can kind of help humans to kind of remove that.
Yeah.
Bits, but this is bad because at the same time, I mean, I'm from Ukraine and the war is currently happening there.
Of course,
so
yeah.
I see that if we had this tech in the US and if US wanted to kind of send it to Ukraine, it would be very helpful. I'm not saying that we need to kind of destroy Russia with that, but at least like shelter or like kind of cover the sky while Russians are shooting missiles. So it's good and bad, to be honest, because like you don't have human lives lost during that flight or like attack or whatever. Whenever it has good purposes.
But it's a fighter jet, isn't it?
Yes.
So I mean, like they're kind of using it for the assumption that maybe in like a couple of years, once it's like trained, you don't need humans. You're going to send them into a war zone. Yeah,
especially and like that, or if let's say there is a terrorist attack with the drones or something, you can always you don't have to sacrifice people in case something goes wrong. So it's AI flown, so it just does the job. And
it's such a hard one, isn't it? I mean, even like terrorist attack. What about terrorist hacking into this and using these, right? So like or I mean, I know it's some people would laugh, but if AGI ever becomes a thing, then is it going to do what it wants to do, or is it going to require instruction and prompt? What do you think, Jason? Like AI, for warfare. What's your thoughts on that super complicated topic?
Yeah, it is super complicated. I think when we think about where is the use of a weapon system justified in maybe a war of aggression. Is a good candidate, right? Where there's two sides to this, which is the loss of human life in terms of the fight that's happening, which all sorts of people can argue about whether the fight itself is justified. I think sometimes with despotism and a war of aggression, there is some justification, I think, in the war. And there's a second side, which is the person having to pull the trigger. The PTSD and the cost to a society of individuals who have had to have gone to that fight. Either they feel like they're justified in terms of a defensive war, or coming to terms afterwards with maybe a war of aggression that has a different moral sense retrospectively after the fact. All those individuals that have had to pull the triggers. As humans, we think that they are more capable of doing that. But actually, there's a huge amount of work that goes into all militaries to convince a human being to pull that trigger. It's not easy. You look at the numbers, and lots of studies were done from First World War onwards in terms of the percentage of individuals who shoot to kill. And in the First World War, it was small. It was like 15, 20%. A lot of the time, people were shooting high.
Okay.
Because confronted with the humanity of the person on the other side, the stories of people playing football at Christmas, right, in the First World War, that actually it was hard for militaries then to work out ways to train individuals to understand, to fight against every piece of human nature, right, which is to look after people in your community and other humans, to do that work. So there's a huge cost to that as well. And nobody wants to see someone's life cut short, in a war, in a war of aggression, or from terrorism. But there's two like really hard sides to this, and I feel like the cost of defense and the societal cost of having to train warriors to fight and the consequences afterwards. Maybe just to give a different perspective, maybe it's worth it for that.
I mean, it would definitely save lives. I mean, it would also the danger is it would potentially escalate war a lot quicker because you don't have the human side involved if people aren't dying as much on your side of the equation. Yeah, I think it probably, like, AI is just going to be in everything, isn't it? Whether it's music, whether it's robot dogs, whether it's the Beatles, whether it's the military. I think you said the genie's out the bottle, and it really is. It's like there's no going back at this point.